did initially when I first started doing the podcast remotely. I didn't stress about it as I didn't stress about it as much because it was a lot of like common names for the most part. And so I get to a point where I just was like, oh, okay, that's Smith. And then one day I had one person like, no, actually we pronounce it this way. And it's like, oh fuck. Okay. Yeah.
All
So
right.
there we go. That's a thing. So anyways, but we are good to go. So if you're ready, I'll do the intro and we can jump into it.
I'm good. Let's go.
Cool. Here we go. Welcome back to another live and amplified livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are back at it again with another amazing podcast. We're coming a little bit earlier, but I also didn't have to work today like I originally thought. So we were able to rearrange our schedules and bring on Natalie Joly 4 hours early. How's it going?
It's good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. When you threw out the idea of moving the podcast up, I was like, actually, that sounds amazing because
I was like, it's been getting dark really early, and I'm like getting ready for bed really early. And I was like, totally fine with it later. But then I was like, oh, well, you're off work. Hey,
yeah,
question.
yeah.
What
Well,
bangs out in the afternoon?
right? It was one of those things where I I work at a TV station, and here in Texas, we didn't quite have the weather you guys had in Nashville there, but it was still scary for Texas. We'll say that. And I had to work through my entire holiday weekend. I was supposed to have 3 days off. I had to work all the way through. And my boss was like, hey, you want to take tomorrow off? And I'm like, sure. I worked 3 days, 3 extra days. So I'll take a day off. Why not? And so here we are.
Yeah.
But excited to have you on the podcast. It's always really cool to get to talk to Boston folks because I know my sound engineer is elated right now because he's from Worcester. So he always loves when we bring
Oh,
up Massachusetts.
yep. I'm from north of the city, town called Wakefield, but
Yeah,
Worcester's about 40 minutes away. I've gone to a lot of shows down there. It's pretty much
nice.
the only reason I go to Worcester is to go to
Fair,
shows.
fair. I I've often told him that I want to go visit Worcester just because that's where he's from, and it's like we probably need to go so you can kind of show me around because I haven't been that far up north, the East Coast. It's like the furthest north I've gone is like DC. So yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, it's a bit of a world up there.
yeah. So how long have you been in? So you're based out in Nashville now. How long have you been there?
I think next week will be 2 years officially. So
Nice.
that's gone by.
So you moved post pandemic, I guess, technically.
Well, yeah, in Massachusetts, it was still kind of mid-pandemic.
Okay.
I was a full-time gigging musician up there, bars, corporate events, weddings, and
Yeah.
I was not allowed to work for a very long time. No live performances, no events. Every wedding had to be a micro wedding.
Yeah.
And for some reason, for weddings, you weren't allowed to have amplification because amplification made COVID worse, I guess. So I did a lot of weddings, just me and my guitar. I wasn't allowed to have a microphone, and it just got really, really crazy. I wanted to get back to work. I wanted to play out, and it was, my husband now, we were just dating at the time, and I was like, you
Hmm.
know what? Let's see what's going on in Nashville. And it was like everyone I knew here was like, oh, we're already back. Like it's open. We're playing out. Broadway's open. Like
Hmm.
shows are back. And I was like, I'm out. Let's
Right.
go. And he was with me. So we came down here and never looked back. We love it.
Fair. I'm actually kind of surprised you didn't come all the way down to Texas because gigs pretty much came back to full capacity by the end of 2020. Like by November, I just remember getting emails saying, "Hey, we've got gigs over here and over here if you want to come hang out." And it's like, cool. I dig it. So,
No, I mean, I moved to Nashville right at the beginning of 2022,
mhm.
and I was still very shut down up in Massachusetts. And,
Wow.
I mean, Nashville is a songwriting
Yeah.
capital of the world, and that's my main focus. I mean,
Mhm.
I've been a gigging musician for my whole adult life, but we do that. I call that my day job. I gig out as a day job, and my real passion is writing music. So I figured, why not just go where the action is?
For sure, for sure. Um, so how long have you been writing your own music?
A long time. I think I wrote my first song when I was about 8 years old, and I'm 27. So a long
Awesome.
time. I had a very musical family, and my dad just messed around with music. It wasn't like a serious thing,
Yeah.
but he played guitar. So we had guitars hanging around the house, and he was actually a singer. He was in a band with his brother. He was the lead singer. So he, messed around, and he had written a few songs. So the idea of writing music was very like normal to me. I
Hmm.
remember going to school in third grade being like, who wants to start a band? And like no one knew what I was talking about. But to me, that's just what I grew up with. And my brother is a musician, my dad's whole family are musicians. So it was just very normalized. It was very around. I grew up with it. And I think I decided, I knew I wanted to do it as go for it really, like
Hmm.
as a career, as a passion, in whatever capacity. I realized really young at like 11, 12 years old that I just wanted to do it. And I started playing shows, and, took me this far.
Nice. That's sick. Um, and obviously this question would kind of morph over time, but when you were first like writing music, who were you listening to it at that time as far as like musically speaking?
Yeah, I was very raised on rock and roll.
Okay.
So from the time when I was a little kid, I was listening to the Beatles, the Eagles, Rolling Stones, AC/DC. My favorite band of all time is Aerosmith. My first concert I ever went to at 10 years old was the Rolling Stones.
Nice.
And I had no idea they weren't from America until they played their first song. And I remember Mick Jagger at the end of it was like, "Hello, Boston." And like I was like, what? I had no idea. I was 10. I mean, I didn't know anything about the bands, but my parents were both big music lovers. Like I said, my dad was a musician. My mom, not so much, but she is a rock and roll lover. So
Nice.
it was just always around the house. And yeah, I was really raised on that kind of stuff. Once I was, that 11, 12, 13 age was right about when Taylor Swift was coming out. And I loved Taylor Swift, early Taylor Swift, her songwriting, like her storytelling. It was also one of the first female acts that I really
Hmm.
got into, because all the bands I loved were men.
Yeah.
So, Taylor Swift was my first like, oh my God, I can really relate to this kind of artist.
Mm.
And I always say that my music now is kind of like a mixture of early Taylor Swift with Tom Petty. if
Nice.
if somehow that combined, that's classic rock up the middle, soft rock mixed
Yeah.
with that like female storytelling component is kind of how I like to describe it.
Awesome. Awesome. It's so funny that you brought up Aerosmith because my sound engineer, Jeff, cannot stand Aerosmith. And it's nothing against the band. It's just because I guess growing up in Boston, they're on the radio like every other song or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, hometown band. I mean, they're rock royalty in Boston for
yeah.
sure. I think I kind of missed that, like by the time I was listening to the radio, they were more of a, nostalgia band. They
Yeah.
weren't all over the place. You
Yeah.
know, their their last big album was right about the time I was born.
Right.
So I
Right.
missed that wave of them being super annoying. And to me, they are just I always
Fair.
say they are what perfect rock and roll sounds like to me.
Fair. 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 Yeah. I was going to say I wasn't really introduced to them until Armageddon came out in the early 2000s and they had that song on there. And then it was just like, oh, who's this? Oh, they've been around since like the 70s. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That whole
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I remember one year my brother got their Oh Yeah Ultimate Hits album for
Hmm.
Christmas. It was a two-sided CD thing. It had so many songs on it, and I wasn't familiar with who they were. I was probably like 7 or 8 at the time.
Hmm.
And he was like playing a CD player around the clock for like days. And I was so like, just like, shut this off. I was so sick of it. And finally, by like the fifth time around, Mama King came on, and I was like, all right, you know what?
Fair.
That's a good song. And that's what got me hooked. Mama Kin was like my favorite song throughout my entire childhood, which was one of their first songs. I think it might have been on their first album. It was one of their first, hits.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what got.
Nice. 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 So you grew up you said Somerville, right?
Wakefield.
Wakefield. What was it
Wonderful.
like? What was it like growing up there for you?
Pretty standard suburbia.
Hmm.
I went to public school, and my town actually was very music centered. Like when I was in high school, music was a big thing in my high school. We offered a lot of music classes. There was a lot of events around town. So I really grew up with this, network of people that really like supported me from a really young age, whether it was playing like local farmers markets or festivals, or the 4th of July parade, which we have like a gigantic 4th of July parade.
Hmm.
And my dad's been in Wakefield almost his entire life. So we know a lot of people and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I really had this supportive community with me and my music. I was not much of a school oriented
Hmm.
person. Um, so I loved the fact that I could take a ton of music classes. And, by the time I was in high school, we were teaching like 101 to garage band and the
Right.
history of rock and roll. Like, yeah, history of rock and roll.
Nice.
Like, it was awesome. And I never had any intention on going to college or anything. So I
Right.
was just like, I was just getting by. I didn't care if I was getting good, AP courses
Mm.
and whatnot. I was just trying to have fun and learn. And I did. And I had a lot of really awesome, music teachers throughout the years that taught me a lot of the basics of what got me going. I started my first band when I was a junior in high school, and we were playing out in Boston and stuff. And my parents were great because I would be out playing till 11 o'clock
Hmm.
midnight, and I just I'm not going to school tomorrow. Like
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm exhausted, and they were cool about it. I'm the fourth kid, so by
Hmm.
me they were like, whatever. Like you're 16, 17 years old. Do what you
Do,
got to do, kind of
do
thing.
you? Do you kind
Yeah,
of thing? That's funny.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that first band, what were you playing? Was it originals, covers?
It was primarily a cover band. We were trying to get into the cover circuit in Boston, playing the Hard Rock Cafe, Greatest
Mm.
Bar, those kind of places. We were sneaking in originals though. I was already writing at that point. I had my brother and I did a lot of production stuff out of my parents' basement. We turned their basement into a studio, and
Mm.
I released my first like CD, literally only existed in a CD form when I
Mm.
was like 15 years old. I was selling it out of a lunchbox
Yeah.
at school. It sounded absolutely terrible. Like, if people are like, I want to hear it, I want to hear it. I'm like, no one hears that anymore, you know? So I had already released some original stuff. I was already writing a
Mm.
lot. I was coming home from school and writing music instead of doing homework. And so yeah, by the time I had the band, we were doing covers. We were getting into the cover circuit
Hmm.
and inputting maybe three originals a night if I could. And
Yeah.
you know, no, Boston doesn't have a super big original music scene.
Okay.
That's kind of another huge why I left. So
Mm.
I felt very much in Boston that covers was where it was at. That's how
Yeah.
you were going to get paid. That's how you were
Yeah.
going to get booked. That's how you were going to bring it out. So that's what we
Yeah.
did, and we did that for a few years.
I feel like that's a lot of major cities where, the cover bands are what's going to get the consistent gigs, but they could almost feel mind numbing, tedious and mind numbing, just because it's the same thing over and over again. Um, but like just finding the original scene, and like I obviously I've never been to Boston, so I don't know, but like just kind of forging forward with your own original music. I think that was the best way to go, just because you don't want to be
Yeah,
yeah,
it was
you,
really hard because it was like I basically always had to choose between like, do I want to play gigs that make money, or do I want to play original shows that I'm basically begging people to come to? And
mm,
and that's just the way that it is in Boston. There isn't much of a original scene. It's just not
mm,
part of the culture.
yeah,
When I came down here to Nashville, people are like, "Oh, what do you want to do this weekend?" I saw this really cool show, and it's an original show. I'm over
mm,
here like, "What? This is
yeah,
unheard of." Like
right,
every Boston, and it's so sad because there's so much talent in Boston. I mean, you have
hmm,
Berkeley right there,
yeah,
and it's just a music city. Everyone, like, you meet people and it's like, oh, our uncles used to be in a band together, and it's like, it's a music city. People are really into rock and roll. There's been so
yeah,
many bands that up and made it in Boston. And it's just hard. I always say to people, there's no one in Boston. Well, there are people, and there's definitely people trying to
Yeah.
revive what once was. So I don't want to not give credit where credit is due, but there's not enough people connecting the artists with the venues, with
Yeah.
the ticket sales, with promotion. There's a big gap there. So you have a ton of artists, and you have a ton of artists that want to play, and then
Yeah.
you have a ton of venues that are going, and it's like, why can't we connect the two?
Fair. I love that you guys in Boston do the same thing we do in Chicago, where even though you didn't technically live in Boston, you still say Boston because it's the one place where everybody knows where it's at. So like when
Oh,
you have
absolutely.
it's like I lived an hour away from Chicago, from downtown Chicago, but I'd still say when I met somebody from out of town, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Chicago. Oh, okay, cool. Because if I told them,
Totally.
oh,
Also, yeah, I mean, most of what I did was in Boston too,
mm,
especially musically, like all my shows and stuff. I mean, I played a ton out of the city and doing stuff in restaurants and
mhm,
whatnot, but most of my work was in the city. And, I felt like I was just in and out of Boston every night for years,
yeah,
building your chops and playing and practicing. And that's how you, build up what you do.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you're based out of Nashville now. You're about to celebrate 2 years. Um, what was kind of that turning point for you to make that trip? I know we'd kind of touched on this in various points so far, but was there like a specific moment that was just kind of like, you know what, screw it, we're going?
Yeah, I mean, COVID was really weird. Before COVID, I had a band up in Boston, and the band dissolved at the beginning of COVID, and I really
Mm,
started doing my own thing. We had always produced our own music, and when COVID happened and the band was done, I really just like, I had nothing else to do but sit home and record music, write and record.
okay.
So
Yeah.
I was really like borrowing in the studio, like all day, every day, nowhere to be. And after like a year or so of that, I loved it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to really try to not only be a songwriter and write my own
Mhm.
music, but I also want to produce my own music. And I really started practicing guitar and bass and, you know, everything that goes into
Yeah.
recording and arranging. And I never got into recording drums. That's where I draw the line. I will not record drums. But I really started doing my own thing and I loved it. And I felt like, okay, this is where I've like really found this passion of mine
Hmm.
is in the right and arranging of my music.
Yeah.
And what better place that than Nashville? I really felt burnt out in Boston. I had done it for a long time and I felt like I had kind of done what there is to do there. Maybe not every little thing. There was
Yeah.
definitely more accomplishments that I could have had in Boston, but I felt like I'm kind of feeling like I'm going around the same circle
Yeah.
every year. I'm not seeing like where to step up from here. And
Hmm.
like I said, COVID was crazy in Boston. The rules were really getting to me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I need some normalcy. I asked Steve, my husband, I'm like, do you want to just move? And he was like, what? We had both lived in the towns we were from our whole lives, and
Hmm.
took about 10 minutes of convincing before he was like, screw it, let's go, let's try
Fair.
it. And
Fair.
we came here a couple months later, found an apartment, and that was it.
Nice. I can't believe it only took 10 minutes. It
It was
almost feel
really quick.
right. It almost feels like that he kind of had his mind made up already. Like he in the back of his head, he was like, hey, yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, well, it was always something on my mind. When I graduated high school, and as I said, I never went to college. I wanted to move to Nashville right out of high school. I was
Mm,
like, I'm gonna go. I was 17 and I was gonna just do the music thing. And like I said, I had a band and I had all these other things going on, and I was making really good money in Boston gigging out. I mean, that's the good
yeah.
thing about Boston. There's a ton of gigs, they're
Yeah.
high paying. So I was like, I'm not going to leave this. I mean, I'm doing great. I'm 17. I'm playing out 4 nights a week. Like, this is
Hmm.
awesome. So I did that for several years. I tried LA for a little bit. I went out there for several months. And it was always like on my mind that at some point I'm going to have to get out of Boston. At
Hmm.
some point, I need to move up somewhere that has more of an industry, that has labels and managers and
Mm,
executives that Boston just didn't have.
yeah.
So, it was always on the table of like, oh, we could move here, we could do that, this could be fun. And I think I think he was just as fed up as I was
Yeah.
with all the COVID rules and everything. And when I suggested it, he was shocked at first, like, wait, what are you talking about? And literally within 10 minutes, he was like, I mean, we can go look at apartments. I'm like, that was easy. Why didn't I do this 3 years ago?
Fair, very fair. And I mean, I'm assuming, or I'm guessing in Nashville, yeah. Do you find a lot of people from Boston in Nashville? Because I feel like I interview a lot of people from Boston that live in Nashville.
Yeah, Boston, New York, the Northeast, New Jersey. I always seem to we find each other. Like
Hmm.
our energies connect. I don't know, but most of the people that I've met and connected with here are from the Northeast,
So,
and it's just like, we're fast talkers, we're loud, we're in your face, and everyone that I meet that's from the South is like, you are not from here. No, I'm not.
no, not
It's
at
just,
all.
and it's fun. I love the South. I love the people down here. It's not a knock at all. It's just we're a little bit of a different breed for
Mm,
sure. But there's definitely a lot of us. That was the other thing. I mean, a lot of the people that I was collaborating with in Boston were gone. They were
mhm.
here. And I was like, I do it. Another one bites the dust. They're gone. All these
Right.
guys I'm trying to work with, they're moving. Like, what am I doing?
It I understand completely. Like you start to realize like, oh wait, am I like the last person here? Am I the last one at the table? Do I need to? And
Yeah,
then
that's really what it felt like.
yeah,
That is what it felt like.
and I think that's the cool thing about Nashville is it's got, like Boston has Berkeley going for it, and I've never been to Berkeley, so I don't quite know, um, like everything, but it's got that prestige of being a really good music school. A lot of students come out of there, but I also feel like a lot of students go there for a short time and then they just end up right in Nashville. Like they don't,
Yeah, I mean, there's like a standing joke that if you're going to make it, you don't graduate Berkeley. You're going
yeah,
to leave before you're going to get picked up. You're going to have an opportunity. And a lot of them stay in Boston. Like I said,
mm,
there's a lot of gigs, a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of fun. I mean, playing in a good cover band in Boston, you're making good money and you're having a blast doing it. And
yeah,
and that's great. It's just that's just wasn't what I was trying to do. I wanted to
yeah,
focus on my original music. Like I said, I fell in love with the production aspect of things too. Most days I find myself, I'm home in front of my computer and I'm like, yeah, like life of a rock star,
right.
and it's what I love. My favorite place to be is just like creating, like on my own time, doing my own thing. And that's really where I get the most satisfaction out of what I do.
Nice. Awesome. Awesome. So let's talk about your new single that just dropped. Oh, what day is it? Today's Wednesday,
Friday.
Friday. I'm
Yeah.
sitting here. I don't know why
Friday.
I'm sitting here trying to do day math. Like that just doesn't comprehend in my head. But
Yeah.
you just dropped a new single on Friday. Um,
Yes.
I've had a chance to listen to it several times. It's called Paint the Picture. What can you tell us about the song? How long have you been working on it? Stuff of that nature.
Yeah, so this song actually was released when I was a senior in high school.
Okay.
It was my second like album project that my brother and I did, and this was the title of the whole album. I think it was like half covers, half originals,
Nice.
and I decided to name it Paint the Picture, and um I made an album release party thing at my high school auditorium. I like went all out on it, sold. I don't even know how many people or tickets it was, but I remember we sold out and I got like the school cafeteria to make us cookies and all this. It was really big project at the time.
Hmm.
And we had recorded the song at home and I always loved the song, but I did not like the actual recording of it.
Mm,
I
yeah.
didn't like the way that the drums sounded. We didn't have them tuned correctly. I didn't love the guitar part. I mean, and it was also 10 years ago. I don't really like the way I sounded and all this stuff.
Okay.
And when I came to Nashville, one of my just like, projects for me was to go back over some older songs of mine that had kind of gotten forgotten over the
Hmm.
years because I've been writing since I was like I said, I wrote my first song at about 8, and not that that's a good song, but
Yeah.
all throughout my teenage years, there were several songs looking back that have always like stood out to me that I'm always like, I wish that like existed. Like I wish other people could hear it.
Yeah.
And this was one of them. So another one was a song I released last year called Prove Them Wrong that I had never released before. I wrote it when I was 16 years old, and it was always one of my favorite songs. We had started recording it and like scrapped the project for whatever reason. It had been like 6 scrapped projects, and I was like, you know what? I'm doing it. It is getting out. I'm finally releasing the song. I have my own studio.
Nice.
I have control, and I'm releasing the song. And I did that last year, and I loved it. And I got a lot of positive feedback from people that were like, this is so cool, you know, releasing stuff from years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot to paint the picture. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to retrack. I'm going to re-record the drum part. I have like a little MIDI keyboard that I do drum parts on. And I was like, I'm just going to rewrite the part and see if I'm vibing with it. And
nice.
I fell in love with it. I sent it to my brother because he and I did the original recording. And I was like, dude, listen to this. And he was like, okay, you need to it sounds so good when you can actually hear the drums. So I decided to go with it. We bought a house this summer. I got married in August. So we bought a house and then got married, and then we had to renovate that house. So I didn't have a studio working for like 6 weeks-ish. And finally I was like, you know what? I want this song out like on the 10-year anniversary. I have to get this done. So I was working out off of like a folding table. Everything was a disaster. And I was like, I'm getting this recording done if it's the last thing I do. And I banged it out in like 4 days, sent it off to be mixed and mastered, got it done and got it released. I mean, honestly, it was such a hectic time in my life. I don't even really remember it. Like, I don't remember recording it. There's some parts in the song, there's some guitar parts where I'm like, that's really cool. Like, who did that? I was like out of body. I don't know. I had a house in complete renovation. I had just gotten married. I was like so in another place, you know, and I was like, I just really wanted to get it done. So I got it done really quickly, and yeah, that's how it came to be. This song really means a lot to me, and it's gotten such, you know, positive reaction from people. It's really, you know, really special to me.
Nice. I love the idea of you asking, oh, who played the guitar? And then you realize it's you, like you did it. It's like, oh,
It's
shit.
when you do things that fast. I always say to people, when you write a song, I write songs really quickly. So when I write a song, it's usually done like in under an hour. And then if I don't record it right away, it doesn't like actually exist yet. It's only like bits and like fragments in my mind, and I can't really put it together because I don't have it memorized yet. I just wrote it. I don't remember the lyrics. I have to like record everything on a voice memo as I write it, or else I'm going to forget like the phrasing, the melody. And I always say to people, like, until I get in the studio and record it, like that song doesn't exist. It's only in my brain, and I can't even like sing it out loud because I don't remember it yet. So that's a big thing for me. I have to like, you know, I have to make it really exist. And that's what happened with the song. I did it so fast that it felt like it didn't even really exist.
Yeah, for sure. And I also like the concept of you going back to older I say older songs, but like songs from a younger you and just revisiting them. And I'm sure so I guess the follow-up question to this is, before I even ask the question, from the original version, did you like rewrite it and restructure it at all, or was it like as you wrote it back in the day?
I definitely always have to change some of the lyrics on
Fair.
my older songs. I was, you know, I was 16, pretty
Fair.
immature. So, but honestly, not too much in this one. I think in my own mind, I kind of reshaped the meaning behind this song.
Yeah.
And definitely a lot of work on the instrumentation. But if you heard the original versus this one, which is actually like it's a video I really want to put on Instagram. I don't have it yet. I'm not sure how to do that, but I really want to make a video where I show like a little bit of the original, a little bit of this one, back and forth, and kind of show how it evolved. There's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, but I do think the biggest difference is really just the recording quality. A lot of the parts are still the same. The drum beat, like that 4-tom beat, is almost identical. But like I said, we messed up the first version. You couldn't actually hear the drums super well. The floor toms were tuned low and the microphones didn't pick them up. So that wasn't great. But a lot of it is just recording quality that has
Yeah.
changed. And, my voice changed so much over the last 10 years. I think that's a huge thing too. And when I listen back to my old recordings, I'm like, who is
Right.
that?
Right.
That is
Right.
not
Fair. 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 Actually, let's put a pin in that and revisit it after the podcast because you just described a series I've been trying to get off the ground for the last 6 months. So
cool.
let's
Let's
put a
do
pin
it.
on let's put a pin on that
All
one.
right. All
Um,
right.
so and but what I like about you revisiting older music, and I tell musicians this all the time, like especially musicians that have been writing for a majority of their life when they were kids, is like just writing like little ditties as a child or whatever, and then like when they write that first song but they release it on CD, like in the mid 2000s, I wouldn't even know how a 12-year-old releases music, but I'm guessing you just put it on a CD and it's like, hey, I got a single out, all that fun stuff.
A lot of CDs. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they tend to like scrub that from their existence. It's like, no, go revisit that song. I'm not saying re-release Rosie Has a Pink Lamb or like whatever it is, but I'm sure there's like a melody in there or a guitar riff or something that sparks a new generation of that song so you can kind of morph it into something completely different. And then you have a really cool story where it's like this song I wrote 2 years ago, but it all got sparked from a guitar riff from the first song I ever wrote. Cool. Now
Yeah,
I'm
no,
in.
I do all the time, to be honest. I pull inspiration from old music of mine all the time because a lot of that stuff no one will ever hear. And it's like, you could never possibly release the amount of songs that I have
Yeah.
written. It would be just absurd. So a lot of it is like, okay, well, this song never made the cut to be released, but this one line in that
Mhm.
song, I love that. And let me just repurpose it. I did that
Yeah.
totally by accident with a song that I released last year called What Will Be.
Mm.
And I was writing a new song, it was brand new. And I was in the last line, I was like going through the chorus and I was on the last line of the chorus. And I was like, I just stole the entire last line of the chorus from the last line of a chorus that I wrote like 7 years ago. That honestly, the song sucked. I would have never released it in that like, and it was a completely different song. But I stole the wording, the melody, the
Yeah.
name of the song, everything. That one line in that song 7 years ago was great, and I repurposed it. And also on a totally other level, being an
Hmm.
artist is so weird because you always have to find the middle ground between who am I, what kind of music do I want to make, with what's popular, what's selling, what do people want to hear, what's going to
Hmm.
grab people's attention. And it's sometimes you lose yourself. Sometimes you lose who you are as an artist. You're too busy trying to please people and please the market that you're like, I don't even know what I want to write anymore. And I find that when I go back to the music that I was writing as a teenager, way before I cared about what anyone thought, when I thought I wasn't planning on anyone even hearing them, it's
Yeah.
the most authentic version of me as an artist. Sometimes I go back and listen to that stuff just to like be like, oh, like this is who I was before I had an Instagram page and before
Right.
I was on YouTube, before I had ever spoken to a music business executive in my entire life. This is who I was as an artist. And I think it's super important to like, you're not going to be that person. You've changed, you've
Yeah.
evolved, you've, become a different artist,
Hmm.
but like, you don't want to lose that either. You want to hold on to that and make sure that's still part of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I almost feel like that's an album in and of itself, like revisiting some of those old songs and just like that's the connective tissue is like all these songs were written by 12-year-old me and rewritten by 27, 28-year-old, like what however old. And yeah, that'd be a really interesting like album idea.
It'd be cool, but I've already released so many of them
Yeah,
again.
fair,
I'm kind of
fair,
wiping out my good material from when I was younger.
fair, very fair. So with Paint the Picture, it's out now for everybody that wants to go listen to it. All it's up on Spotify and all that fun stuff. do you ultimately see yourself working towards like a bigger project, or do you kind of see yourself playing the Spotify, let's release singles and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I go back and forth on this all the time. Right now, I'm into the Spotify singles thing
Mm,
because, for one, it's just more economical
hmm
to do one project at a time. Also, I produce all my music myself.
hmm
And, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm going to lose my mind just working on one song at a time.
Okay.
So, I'm definitely a bit of a perfectionist, and I get very into the nitty gritty of, retracking things a million times, making sure it's perfect.
hmm
So, my biggest thing for me personally, like, I love the idea of albums and pieces of art that are like, like Abbey Road is like
Yeah.
such a cool like concept album. Like I would die to be able to do something like that, to have the budget and have the means, and when I one day I will. But for now, I think I spent so much time in the past. Like if you look at my Spotify page, you'll see that I had songs out in like 2015,
hmm
and then nothing was released again until like 2020.
hmm
And there were a couple releases in there that, like, I had to pull down and re-upload and,
Yeah.
Spotify stuff. But all in all, between 2015 to 2020, I really didn't release that much music, and it like really was really painful and frustrating to have
Mm.
all this stuff that no one was hearing. And I was such a perfectionist about it. And I kept starting these bigger projects. I'd be like, I'm going to do a 4 or 5 song EP, or I came up with a 12-song album that I was going to do. And I'd get like a good amount of the way towards doing it. And then for some reason, the project would fall apart. Either the band broke up, or the person managing us is no longer managing, or
Mm.
like just stuff I had no control over would
Yeah.
end up ruining projects. And I was like pulling my hair out. Like I want to do all these fun things. And now it's been 5 years and I have like a couple songs to show for
hmm
it because all these projects keep going to the wayside.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to start releasing singles. Like as soon as it's ready, it's getting released. And
hmm
then I pick the next song. As soon as that's ready, it's released, just for now, so that I can build up my, online presence. It's like, I look like I just started writing songs. I have like 7 or 8 songs released, and it's like I have hundreds that no one's ever heard. It's like
Right.
painful to my existence.
I completely understand that. It's one of those things because I definitely went through a lot of that. Like I started off as a filmmaker and I thought that's what I was going to do. I was going to make movies, all that fun stuff. And I had all these ideas for projects and I would like start the project and then it's like, oh crap, I need money or I need this. I don't have this. And then the project would go by the wayside. And I threw away like 10 like really solid projects from the time I was 20 till the time I was like 26, you
Yeah.
know?
No, I've
And
done
so,
the same thing. And it's really like extremely frustrating.
yeah. And it's just kind of like now as I'm older, I'm in my mid 30s and it's like, okay, I know what I can handle. Yes, I have 1.5 million ideas that I want to do. I'm gonna go write them down. So as the second I have funding or a little bit of funding to get like concept together, I'm gonna go revisit that idea. But for now, I'm not gonna get myself into crippling debt because I have an idea for a show. Yeah. So
Yeah, no, and I totally get that. And, recording music is a lot cheaper than
yeah.
making a movie, but it's still not cheap. And the other thing is too, like, I love the idea of making albums and having a really like a body of work all come out at once.
hmm
But that, unfortunately, it's not helping the algorithms, and they
Yeah.
want you release things more often. And also, I'm fully independent. Like
Yeah.
I do my research on how to market music and whatnot, but like I don't know what the hell to do with an album. I barely know what to do with a single.
Right.
I don't know how to market it. I have some, publicity
Mm-hmm.
contacts and radio contacts, but not enough to handle an entire album. So it almost feels like, okay, I would put in all this time, all this effort, all this money, and then like, would anyone even hear it? And
hmm
that's really, discouraging because you obviously choose the songs that you want people to hear. It's hard enough getting your song in front of people when it's just one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would love to do a whole album or a short EP or something in the near future. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, I'm big on like not throwing away my songs at this point. Cause like you, I've done it. I've just done it many times. I've scrapped projects too many times that I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to bite off what I can chew now, do one thing at a time. And, in the about last year, I think I've released 5 or 6 songs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, better than if I released 0 big projects.
Right.
I mean, it's better than nothing.
Right. No, and I 100% agree. Like you're speaking a lot of truth, and I think a lot of people need to hear that because they wait until it's absolutely perfect to release, when in reality you release like a 5-song EP, let's say. People are going to bond to that one song, and then they're going to wonder where everything else is because you threw everything out in one felt swoop. And just kind of, but you put yourself like like assuming you go into a studio, because I understand not everybody has the ability to do their own audio and stuff, although I think it's a little bit easier to learn than people think. But that's my personal opinion, especially for like a like if you're doing solo acoustic stuff, it's really you just gotta sit down and learn. It's really not that hard to learn it. But just throwing everything out at once just to be like 6 months later, okay, when's the next project? When you spent $5,000, whatever it is, to put out this EP, and it's like, well, I got to try and figure out where the money for the next one's coming because I just threw everything.
Absolutely. Well, people's attention spans are so short now. Like, I wish I lived in a world where I believed that if I release a 5-song EP, people are really going to sit down and listen to it front to back and appreciate all the little nuances that I've put in it that I think are so cool. But that just isn't going to happen. People are digesting content right now in like 15-second videos. And it's almost like asking too much of your fan base. That's kind of how I feel. And again, I would love to get to the point, you look at Taylor Swift, she can release 80 songs at once and everyone is going to listen to them all and they're going to memorize the lyric and they're going to know them. But that's Taylor Swift and I'm not Taylor Swift. So I don't want to ask too much of my fans. Like, hey, do me a favor and go spend an hour of your time listening to my music. I think it's a lot easier to say, hey, here's a new song. Here's another new song. Here's another. It's more sustainable to me. And I think it's more of what people, I think it's where the industry is headed. And I find it really interesting. Like, I'm a big, like, I'm a traditional person, right? Like, I wish I was alive in the 70s when, the music industry made a lot more sense and life was simpler. And, but so there's a lot of me that says like, oh, I want to, go back to when you could, when you made money off of selling albums or, you didn't worry about streaming and all this stuff. That definitely, I would love to go back to that time. But if you go back even further than that, I find it interesting. Before that, like the records that were coming out were like a song on each side. That's what you were getting, like 2 songs at once, and I think in a way it's more palatable. I think maybe that timeline where like bands were releasing albums that were like 18 songs. I'm not sure that was like the most realistic thing in the world. And I think a lot of the music in those albums was getting lost. That's why you'd have an album with 15 songs on it and you get 2 or 3 singles. Well, what about this? Like, that's putting in all this effort. You're writing these songs, and with some people, the other songs sucked. Like, that was part of the business, was 3 good singles, the rest of the album sucks, and it doesn't matter. But for an artist like myself, I would never release a song that I wasn't like fully invested in, that I didn't like fully believe in. So at that point, you're asking me to throw away like what, 75% of the album so that hopefully 25% of it is well liked. And that's just,
Mm.
I don't like those numbers.
No, but to what I did like about that whole model is finding those deep B-side cuts where it's like, oh, this is a throwaway song, but it's like better than everything else on the album, you know? Like I just
Totally. That's what you're saying. Like the throwaways were so good,
yeah,
but like I can't even imagine being the artist being like, I have to throw this one away.
right?
Like I don't know. Like I wouldn't like doing that. As the listener, it's cool. But as
Hmm.
the artist on the other side of things,
Yeah,
that would be
yeah.
so for me.
Oh yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, I know we got to promote it around these three songs, but this doo-wop whatever over here, that's the best song on the album. Why aren't we it's kind of like that whole Queen argument. Like I was watching Bohemian Rhapsody the other day, and it like when they were trying to promote the Bohemian Rhapsody recording, they wanted to promote a different song, and it's like, oh man, that those struggles, those are real. So
Yeah. Also, like I mean, there's pros and cons to everything.
mhm.
But I think where we're at in the music industry, with the fact that albums, for an independent artist,
Mhm.
albums don't make you any. So you're
Yeah.
not making any return on your massive investment. I mean, I do my own recording, so I'm really lucky. My costs here to make a song front to back is like a third or a
Mhm.
quarter of what you're gonna pay if you go to any decent Nashville studio.
Mhm.
So I'm really lucky with that. But let's say you put in, I mean, I know people that are putting in 10 grand just for a
Yeah.
4-song EP,
Mhm.
and you're not gonna make any money back on that. So with like to your point where you
Yeah.
said like, oh well, now it's time for the project. Where do we get that money? It's like
Mm.
I'm still in debt from the first one.
Yeah.
I saved up however many years it took to get that money for the first one.
Yeah.
If you're really like, if you're just an artist and you don't have a benefactor or you don't have an investor or what, you're not independently wealthy, which
Yeah.
most of us aren't. I mean, you're saving money from gigs. Like
Yeah.
you're making $300 here, $200 here, and you're saving that money over, and you're paying your bills, and you're paying your car insurance, and you're paying your musicians that are playing with you, and you're
Yep.
buying your equipment, and like it's all this stuff, and the amount of time it takes to save up that money, and then you spend it all, and then you put it out there, and it's like, ta-da! And then the next day, you're like,
Right.
I'm in the exact same place I was yesterday.
Yep.
Like that didn't even move me forward. Now, of course, there's always the opportunity that some bigwig might hear your song and say, that is awesome. I want to
Mhm.
sign you. That's the goal, right? But
That's the hope.
I mean, that's the hope, but you got to be like economical in the meantime. That isn't the like likely
Mhm.
scenario that's going
Yeah.
to happen for everyone releasing music. That's the minority by a lot that happens to, and you're spending tens of thousands to get there. My husband always says he loves when people say like, oh, that person is an overnight success, and he just gets such a kick out of it because he sees all the work that goes into what I do and how
Yeah.
many years I've been at it and how much work I do that yields no financial results. Like I
Mhm.
just have to keep grinding away and doing podcasts and doing interviews and doing photo shoots and making my music. All of it's going out, and not as much is coming back in. And he just gets such a kick out of it, this whole idea of like an overnight success. And it's like the amount of work that it takes to be discovered to become that overnight success. And, I mean, musicians get it. We're all doing it. But I think the layperson thinks that like, oh, you're just recording a song, like that's fun. And it's like it certainly is fun. Don't get me wrong, I love it. This is why we do what we do. But there's
Mhm.
a lot of frustration and money going into it.
Yeah. I'm 100%, but I will say you are doing something correct because I've been following your social media and just seeing the interactions that you get on your social media and like obviously I've not seen you perform live. I haven't been to Nashville and since the pandemic started. So I haven't had a chance to see you perform live, but just seeing what you're doing on social media, you're doing something correctly. And I think it's a very short time away from that moment where everything just starts to unfold and it all pays off. And I mean, I'm sure it all pays off now, but yeah.
No, I mean, it does. You have to have you have to have a level of passion for what you
Mhm.
do that is enough to like, you know, you're going to have successes, you're going to have failures, and you need to just like be like, okay, we got to roll with the punches and still wake up the next day and go back to work. Like, or I always tell people like something shitty happens, like you get one day to complain about it and feel bad for yourself and go cry it out if you need to, or whatever you got to do. You get one day and then sleep it off, wake up and recalibrate, figure out what your next move is. Like
Mhm.
you don't just get to you don't give up, you know?
Yeah.
And one of my biggest mentors, one of my dad's friends who is a musician, and he really taught me he's the one who got me recording my own stuff when I was
Mhm.
really young. He taught me how to use Logic and whatnot. And he used to always say to me, no one just doesn't make it. They give up. So if you don't give up,
Mhm.
something's going to stick eventually. When you don't make it, that means you decided to give up and stop trying. And it's always stuck with me when I have, you know, setbacks. Last week, for instance, my entire, like you said, social media, you know,
Yeah.
Instagram has been my main social media for the last several years. They deleted my entire account. Instagram deleted my entire account that I have spent the last 10 years building up. And I mean, it's basically my digital business card. It's my whole
Yeah.
discography. Everything I've
Yeah.
done is there. All my contacts are there. And they just deleted my account and they're like, you know, you didn't go along our community guidelines. You're deleted forever. I'm like, what? I'm like, I gave myself a day. I'm like, like, I was so pissed off. And I'm like, okay, I guess I have to start over. And I was like, you know what? This is just what am I going to do? Give up just because of
Mhm.
Instagram? No, but was it absolutely infuriating? Yes. And after like 3 days of mourning the loss of my Instagram page, they randomly emailed me and were like, sorry, we got that wrong. You can have your page back. I'm like, well, since you already gave me a heart attack over here, thank you for that. But, you know, and I'm actually really looking back, I'm really glad it happened because I have such a love-hate relationship with social media. It's such an
Mm.
amazing tool to connect people and to put out what
Yeah.
you're doing free at no cost. And, but at the same time, like, you get sucked into the trends and the
Yeah.
algorithms and who's liking what kind of content. And it's like, it gets so hard to just do what you want to do that it really like having it like ripped away from me for no reason so quickly. And it was also like 2 days before Paint the Picture was going to come out. And
Mhm.
that's primarily how I promote my music. I was
Mhm.
like, uh, and it really like, it was a really good exercise in me like really getting back to what's actually important. Like, okay,
Mhm.
I might have lost this massive tool, but like I'm still here. I
Yep.
still got my music. I'm still like I still have my studio. Like let's worry about the real life things. I have a husband, I have a house. Like
Yep.
this sounds so crazy, but we get so wrapped up in this digital world that it's like can we just like put our feet on the ground for a second and be like, okay, all of this can be taken away in an
Mhm.
instant. We don't have control over it. I'm not sure who the hell does, but it ain't me. And at the end of the day, all I really have control over is me and my music and my happiness and doing things that, you know, serve me in a creative way that is me expressing myself and hopefully fans relate to that. But that's all I can do. That's all I can control.
Mhm.
I can't control whether Instagram wants to ruin my life or not. That's up to them.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't control it.
It's one of those things where it's like, I think everybody kind of needs that moment where they realize, like, oh shit, this could all be gone and now, like that, it could all be gone. So,
Yeah,
it,
I gotta say, honestly, as someone who has such a love-hate relationship with Instagram, now that I have it back, I definitely have a newfound appreciation.
mhm.
Whereas like it turned into the biggest headache and I'm like just, oh, I have to make this content, I have to do that. And now I'm like, I get to make this content and I get
Right.
to book all these gigs. I have all these contacts, and whereas it really reframed the whole thing for me. Not that I think it's the greatest thing in the world. I think
Right.
social media is like the demise of humanity in a certain way, but it really put it in perspective. Like, okay, this is a tool. I
Hmm.
get to use it, and while I have it, while they're gonna give me my page back and let me have it, I'm going to use it. I'm going to take advantage of it. I'm going to meet people and go on podcasts, and I'm going to get out there and promote myself while I can, because it can be gone at any minute.
Yeah. And that's why I've started, especially with this podcast, like as much as I'm trying to get the podcast back in person, because I just think the conversations are a little bit more intimate and they go a little bit of a different direction. Right now, it's like I've had that experience where it's like, oh, this could all be gone tomorrow. And it's like, I'm going to start taking these chances to reach out to people that I either A, don't know, or B, I don't think would ever consider being on the podcast because, like there's like a subscriber difference or, like whatever it is. And it's like, you know what? The worst thing that I can do is ask and they say no. Like that's the worst case scenario. And then we're right back where we started. So,
Yeah, no, and it's funny, like I find myself saying that to people all the time, but it's
hmm
so hard to listen to your own advice.
hmm
It's so hard to, like, the moment when you're about to send that message, you're like, what are they going to think of me? I totally get that. That's
yeah,
how I am with like booking and things like that. And it's like, you know what? Like you said, what's the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to be right back where I am now, having not even tried. And at least I can say I tried. And sometimes it's going to work out.
yeah,
And it's going to be like, thank God I tried.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
the,
I've got,
the, that's listen. You gotta learn at some point.
yeah, I've gotten some of my biggest interviews by just sending a random message saying, hey, would you be interested? Yeah, let's do it. And yeah,
Yeah, and it's
see?
also I've also found too, like it's really like timing, like when you send that message, like what was happening in that person's life that day, and what were they going through? Were they in
Yeah.
a super social mood and they wanted to have a nice conversation, or did they just have one of their projects tanked and it
hmm
failed and they're thinking life sucks and I don't want to
Yeah.
do any of that. It really depends on that too. Like you never know what someone else is going through. And
hmm
it's also like if something doesn't work out, I've really just leaned into like if it didn't work out, it wasn't meant for me. If it didn't work out, it wasn't supposed to be in my life, or I wasn't
hmm
supposed to work with that person. And if it does work out and it's easy and it's quick and things just fall into place, then that was meant for me. That was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So when you take on that perspective, it's really like you can't lose,
hmm
because it's like, someone's watching over me and saying like, nope, don't go that way. That's not going to
hmm
work out for you. Or this is good for you. Do that. I'm going to make this easy on you. And when you look at it like that, everything ends up being like a blessing, because it's like,
hmm
if it works out, what a blessing. If it
Yeah.
doesn't work out, thank God I didn't get into that.
Right.
And
Right.
I've really tried to adopt mentality where if something doesn't go my way, I'm like, okay, it was probably saving me from something. Because I'll be honest, there's been a lot of things in my career that I've wanted that I got that did
hmm
not end up being good. And it's
hmm
like, I always know what's best. We don't always know what is really meant for us. So if you take that mindset, even when you have a little failure, it turns into a like, all right, that
Yeah.
was a blessing.
100% agreed. It's perfectly said. Um, so taking a step outside of music, outside of the industry, all that fun stuff. What do you do outside of the business when you need like 5 minutes to decompress or an hour or what do you kind of do outside of the industry?
Well, I am a housewife, so I do a lot of cooking and organizing and decorating, and I love
Nice.
my home, and I love creating spaces that feel good to me. This week I was updating my piano room downstairs, so I got a new piano and I redecorated the whole room.
Nice.
So, I'm very inspired by my surroundings, very much so. So I like
Mhm.
creating spaces that I feel good in, that I want to be creative in. I love hanging out with my family. I'm one of four kids, and one of my
Nice.
sisters moved down to Nashville a few months ago. So we've been here alone with no family for almost 2 years. And now I have my sister and her husband and
Nice.
four kids. so I get to hang out with them all the time. I'm pretty big into, you know, politics and what's going on in the world. So
Mm,
I'm always listening to podcasts and, you know, scrolling through X and seeing what's going on. I
yeah.
like to be kept up to date with, you know, current events and what's going on in the world. I'm very interested in that. Um, yeah, other than that, relaxing. I love good TV. I'm a big TV person. So I'm always like, I always have a series that I'm like really emotionally invested in. Right now I'm into
Nice.
Reacher. I don't know if you've tried it. It's fantastic. But yeah,
I've
those are my hobbies.
nice. I've heard of Reacher, but I've not actually watched it. Like
It's really
I
good. Well, I'm very into like FBI law enforcement kind of shows. So if
mhm,
you like
yeah.
that, like
Okay.
that, like not, I don't like violence, but I like the like car chases and the intense
Mhm,
and the complexity of crimes and whatnot. I
yeah.
think it's so interesting. It's really if you're into that kind of thing, it's really good.
Yeah. Oh, I'm into I watch Law and Order SVU all the time. Like that for whatever reason I got into that in college and it was just kind of like that one thing that I've not given up on.
Yeah.
And
That was
so
me when I was in high school. It's actually really funny. I haven't used Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. I haven't used that in like years. And then when they took
mhm,
away my Instagram page, I was like, all right, you know what? Maybe I need to like look at other platforms and
right.
stop putting all my eggs in this one basket. So I was like, let me go look at that old Twitter account of mine. And I was like going through my old tweets. Just I literally haven't tweeted since I don't know 8, 9, 10 years ago. So I was like going through to like see if there was like anything embarrassing and delete it.
Mhm.
And like, okay, I tweeted so many times about how much I loved SVU. I was actually like, I was alone on my phone. I was embarrassed even in front of just myself. Like the amount of tweets that 16-year-old Natalie made about how much I loved SVU was like
Mhm.
mortifying. Like I really needed to get a life, like big time.
Fair. Fair, fair. You know, it's I
Needless to
about
say, it's a great show.
yeah, it's and actually I isn't it isn't the new season starting tomorrow or is it next week? I don't
What are they on, like season 87 now? It's like the longest running show of all time, I think.
yeah.
It's
As
very impressive.
it is. It really is. And the fact that it's been the same two or well, not same two anchors, but it was like you've had um Mariska Hargitay there since season one, and then Ice-T there since season two, and then
Yeah.
and I guess now Elliot Stabler or Christopher
Yeah.
Maloney.
Is he
He's kind of back. He's got his own series, but he makes guest appearances on SVU now all the time. So
yeah, a lot of my tweets were about Benson and Stabler. I love them. They were like such friendship goals.
yeah, fair, very fair. So no, that's really cool. It's I'll have to check out Reacher. I've not I like there's just I've been on a Taylor Sheridan kick recently and I've been watching all his stuff, you know, like Yellowstone and that whole spinoff and then Tulsa King and yeah, so that's
Yeah,
kind of where my head's
I haven't done Tulsa King. I do want to though. I love
Mm,
Yellowstone. I watched Yellowstone like around the time of moving to Nashville, and like
yeah.
I'm from the Northeast, and like I'm a Boston girl, but I've
Mhm,
always had like an affection towards like Western culture. Like I
yeah.
rode horses as a kid, and you know I've always my goal is to have some sort of farm someday,
Mm,
and I just really like that lifestyle, and I revere that like old American traditional culture. You know, I'm really into that, and Yellowstone really hit me in my feels. Like
right.
I started like, you know, buying some outfits that looked like,
Yeah.
but I was like, okay, I need to stop. Like
Yeah.
I need to go back to who I am. Like,
Right.
but
It
I love Yellowstone. Such an amazing show, and I think that whole like old American Western culture of like this is my land. I'm like, yeah, it's your land. Like I
it's
just love that. I think it's
yeah.
great.
It's so funny because like I didn't even start watching Yellowstone. I was watching 18 or I started watching 1883. I had Paramount Plus and I kept seeing the ads for it. And I'm a really big fan of Tim McGraw and his acting career. I think he's a really talented actor. Um, and so I saw he was on it and I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this. This just looks interesting. And so I
Yeah.
watched the series and then I just sat on it for 6 months. I was like, okay, cool. I watched the series. And then I watched it again. And then at the end of one of the episodes, it started promoting season 4 of Yellowstone. And at the time, I had just fractured my knee and sprained my ACL. So I wasn't going anywhere for a while. And so it's like, okay, well, I guess I'll watch season 1 of Yellowstone. I'll give it a couple of episodes. And if I like it, cool. If I don't, cool. You
And you
know?
got hooked.
Oh, I got hooked. And then I made it just in time. Like I finished the series just in time for season 4 to start, or no, season whatever season they're on right now, like whatever kind of weird season they're on right now. And
I don't know what's going
they're not they're releasing, so this is going to be their last season or whatever, the last like part of the season or the last part of the series, I guess. And it'll be out in November, I think. So
I really
I
wish they kept that going.
yeah,
Solid 10 seasons.
yeah. It's I don't know, but it's a whole thing. So
Yeah.
um
I don't know what happened. I really loved that show. I got to get back into it and
yeah,
finish. I think I finished like halfway through season 4.
yeah.
Got to get back in.
Season 4, they come down to Texas. It's or wait, was it no season 3? They came down. I don't remember. They were in Texas at one point. It was cool. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah. So really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat. This was the Yellowstone conference. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Yeah.
Um, so if anybody wants to check out anything, Natalie Joly, your music, your socials, shows, all that fun stuff, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm just Natalie Joly on everything that is Joly with one L. You can find me on most of my shows and stuff I post on Instagram. If you're local to Nashville, definitely follow me on Instagram. Come to a show, say hi. I'd love to meet you. My original music is on all streaming platforms, so whatever you prefer, Spotify, Apple, whatever you'd like, just search me there. And if you kind of want to figure out a little bit more about who I am and get a whole picture, my website is just nataliejoly.com. It has my music, it has my background, it has the whole thing. So feel free to message me. I love meeting my fans. I love meeting people. And yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really excited when you said yes, you were interested, and then as it came closer, I was getting a little bit more and more nervous, and then I realized you were from Boston. I was like, I bet you I could say very little during this podcast, and it'll still be an amazing podcast.
I know. I always have to preface with people like I kind of talk a lot. So if I'm going overboard or I go off on a tangent, just like give me a little sign. Like
Fair,
shut up.
fair, fair. I do have to ask though before we wrap this up, how long did it take for you to get rid of your Boston accent? Because
So I really haven't. This is just how I talk. I never really had a Boston accent.
yeah,
I always tell people it's a funny thing because my parents are both like super thick
yeah,
Boston accents,
yeah,
but none of the kids got it. I think it's like a generational thing. Like I think it's
fair,
kind of going away. If you're in
fair.
the suburbs and stuff, this is just how I talk. Some people here do notice it right away. I'll be
Okay.
like standing in line at the door and they'll be like, "You're not from here." I'm like, "You were eavesdropping."
No shit. You're right. Well, because I had the conversation with my buddy Jeff when I first met his mother, and he was like, "Okay, there's ever anything you don't understand what the hell she's talking about, just ask me and I'll explain it to you." Because it was like she threw around terms like packy and like just like all these
Oh
different
yeah,
like very
I definitely say it's tacky.
yeah.
We use different words. Like we don't use like the one that drives me insane is we don't use a roundabout. Like that
Yeah.
is the stupidest word to me, and I don't understand it. I don't even like rotary. People don't get that. Or like the worst word I say is I don't say the word drawer. Like I
Hmm.
can't say that. I'm putting it in the draw.
Yeah.
That's just how I say it. Or like I don't say mirror. I say
Yeah.
the mirror.
Yeah. Fair.
So it's like it's a little different, but
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in the city. My mom's like a full-blooded Italian, so I have
Hmm.
half of that in me.
Fair.
And that side of things is the thick Boston accent. That's where it
Fair.
comes from. The Italians that grew up in Boston, that's where I get it. But me personally, I don't know. I
Yeah.
didn't really get it.
Yeah. But so when I met his mom, he was like, "All right, she's got a super thick accent. You're gonna have a hard time understanding her, but I got you." I'm like, "Okay." And then we just started talking. I didn't even know. like had he not told me she was from Boston, I wouldn't have known. Like I just like I don't know. I think I'm getting kind of tone deaf to accents or something. I just don't pick up on a lot of them.
Yeah, no, I mean, coming down here too, like in Boston, no one has a Southern accent. So
Yeah.
that's been like, I have a hard time sometimes understanding Southern accents and Southern
Hmm.
slang. I'm like, what did that guy just say? I have a hard time. Me and Steve will look at each other like, did you get it? Nope. Did you? Nope. Like,
Yeah.
so I have a hard time with that. The Southern slang, some of the words that they say down here, I'm just very unaccustomed to. Like, I'm trying to
Fair.
think of them right now. I can't even think of them because I don't know what, I still don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I
Fair.
haven't figured it
Fair. Where I get in trouble is I mix my Chicago slang with the Southern because I haven't lived in Chicago in 12 years. And I've pretty much
out. Yeah.
lived south of like Nashville ever since. And so
Yeah.
like a lot of the Southern slang I've picked up, and then a lot of the Texas slang, and then a lot of the Chicago slang. It's like just some weird melting pot. I'll throw out a word that I've just concocted myself, and everybody's like,
Yeah.
"What the hell does that mean?" And I'm like,
Wasn't everyone on these words?
"Yeah," and it's like, "Oh, you don't know what all y'all mean?" Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. So
Yeah.
anyways, but I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat. This was a very fun conversation, and we would love to do it again with the next single
Yeah.
or like whatever you got. But once again, thank you everybody.
Absolutely.
Once again, thank you everybody for hanging out, and we will catch you all later.
Thank you so much.
Ooh, awesome. Oh no, where are all my buttons at? I can do it up here. Let's do that. Ah, awesome, awesome, awesome.